What's up, YouTube? Tonight's video is the first in my new series of random record reviews. In this series, I hope to highlight random records in my album collection and talk a little bit about the history about them, why I think they're special, and basically urge you to purchase these because I feel like they should be part of your collection too. So we're going to go ahead and get started tonight, and this is all about the debut album by Queens of the Stone Age. Regardless of what you may think about Queens of the Stone Age, this first album doesn't really sound like anything else in their catalog, and I'll explain why in a moment. I have a few versions of this album, and the main one I'm going to talk about is this vinyl reissue of it. This was reissued in the year 2011, however the original album came out in the year 1998. So as far as the landscape of rock music in 1998, I can tell you that there aren't a lot of albums that sound like this. This album is very indebted to what is commonly known as stoner rock, which the way I would describe it is heavy bass and drum sound, a lot of repetition, and very indebted to early 1970s rock music, such as things like Black Sabbath. The thing that made Queens of the Stone Age a little different is it has that heavy sound, it has the repetition, however the lyrics and song structure are much more pop, maybe even power pop style. So it's was designed in a way that it's radio friendly, yet still has that heavy side that if you're into repetition and you really want to get into the style or the sound of the record, there's a lot of depth to it as well. This very first Queens of the Stone Age album was not really a huge success, and one of the reasons for that is it had very limited distribution. So I'm actually going to talk about this copy of it first. This is my original CD copy of the album, and this is the original pressing from 1998. The thing that makes this a little unique is it was released on this record label here. Zoom in a little bit for you. And they were known as Loose Groove Records. Loose Groove Records was a very small indie label, however it had a big name behind it, and that was Stone Gossard of Pearl Jam. It was his kind of vanity project to put out some bands that he enjoyed. Queens of the Stone Age's background is the roots of the band started in the band Kyuss that released several albums throughout the early and mid-1990s. So I'm going to back up a step and talk about Kyuss here first. And we will start with the final Kyuss album from 1995 called And the Circus Leaves Town. At this point in Kyuss, the band was getting pretty close to breaking up, but there was also some personnel changes in this album. So here we have the lead guitarist of Kyuss, not the lead vocalist though, who also went on to lead Queens of the Stone Age, and this is Josh Homme. But the personnel change in Kyuss at this time was they got a new drummer, and that is this guy. This is Alfredo Hernandez. This definitely changed the sound of this Kyuss album compared to the two that came before it. But I think it definitely was the beginning of the working partnership between Josh Homme and Alfredo Hernandez that led to Queens of the Stone Age forming. So just to give you a little background on Kyuss, like I said, they were a little heavier, I would say, than Queens of the Stone Age. Their vocalist was not Josh Homme, and their vocalist was a little more aggressive, a little more, I don't know, classically shouty, I guess I would say, rather than the pop side. So Kyuss was going on, like I said, about wrapped up at this point. But there's one final hurrah for Kyuss, and this is again where the Josh Homme and Alfredo Hernandez partnership bloomed. So we're going to talk about this, which is a bootleg recording, actually. This was originally released on CD, and it is a compilation of pretty much the final Kyuss recordings, as well as the debut recordings of Queens of the Stone Age. So when Queens of the Stone Age formed, they actually were not called Queens of the Stone Age, they were called Gamma Ray, and these are the first three songs that Queens of the Stone Age put together. Kind of a demo tape, if you will. So the Gamma Ray songs formed the roots of what became the Queens of the Stone Age proper solo album, but one of the first times, again, that Alfredo and Josh worked together on recordings. So I thought this was worth a mention too, because you'll see in a moment some of these songs reappear on the Queens of the Stone Age proper album. But this is highly recommended too. But I actually want to move on and go ahead and start talking about the album proper. So this album, again, was released in 1998, didn't really fit in with the rock landscape at that time. If you think back, 1988 was very heavy with, I don't know, a lot of stuff like Korn and Deftones and things like that, where this is a lot more classically influenced. So the first thing I want to talk about, I guess, is this album cover. And I guess at a quick glance down the record store shelves, you're thinking, okay, that's a pretty suggestively posed woman on the cover there. Well, look a little closer. That's a dick. So thought I'd call that out first of all. It's kind of a little trick of the eye there that this is not a woman on the cover of this album. And I guess it kind of ties into the Queens of the Stone Age name of the band. So we're going to go on to what's going on with the back cover of the album here. And as I said, this is the original pressing on Loose Groove Records. This went out of print for a very, very long time after this album was released. Queens of the Stone Age really became a lot more popular after this first album with their second album, which was called Rated R. And this CD, like I said, fell out of print. The vinyl fell out of print, and they started going for big, big money. Original copies of this Loose Groove CD started to go for about $100, if you can believe it. Maybe not more than 7 or 8 years ago. I owned this before that, and it was kind of tempting to sell my copy. However, I love this album so much and have since then that I really couldn't part with it. So this today is not worth much because it has been re-released, but at the time, this was going for big bucks. The other thing is the original pressing of the vinyl doesn't have the same cover as the CD. It actually has a gatefold topless woman biker chick on the cover, probably some recycled art from the 70s they found in a magazine maybe. I do not own an original pressing of the vinyl, and the reason for that is it is extremely expensive now. Even after this has been properly reissued on both formats, the original vinyl is just astronomically priced. So this is the reissue of the vinyl that came out in the year 2011. There was also a reissue of the CD that has the same track list as this. So let's talk about that next. This reissue vinyl is a gatefold, and it has some of the original art from the CD and vinyl issue as well on the inside. A couple of early band photos here. We have Josh Homme there, some topless chicks, and Alfredo Hernandez. So this album, again, was put together basically by the two working together. Alfredo played the drums. Josh Homme played basically everything else, along with a couple other people helping out. The other thing about this is this back album cover photo. And it's a little misleading because we have Alfredo, we have Josh, then we have this guy. This is Nick Oliveri, and he is very infamous for his run with Queens of the Stone Age. However, he appears on this back album cover, but he does not play on the album. So it's a little misleading because he was just getting back into the band at the time when this photo was taken. And then when they toured this album later on, he was a full-fledged member of the band and made several other albums with Queens of the Stone Age. So we're not going to talk too much about Nick because this is a project of these two. The other thing about this album is the reissue, they altered the track listing. So the original album featured 11 songs. The reissue has 14. And the way it's presented is a little unusual because looking at the track listing, well, I guess I'd have to show you the original as well, but they've altered the flow of the songs. So typically when you get a reissue, they add some bonus songs, they will tack them onto the end. This album is not the case. They actually intersperse them within the original track listing. So for someone like me, that's been listening to the CD pressing for however many years that is, 17 years now, it's a little confusing to listen to this on vinyl with a new track listing. But I guess to a newcomer, that wouldn't be a concern because the bonus tracks were recorded about the same time, and they really fit right in with the same style of the song. So the next thing I want to talk about is basically the reason why you should buy this album in any form you choose. The songs on this are incredible, and I just have to preface this with, if you've only listened to Queens of the Stone Age past this album, you might not recognize the sound of it very much. They kind of went in several different directions after this album. The next album, Rated R, featured everything from hardcore songs to kind of goth mopey songs to even heavier rock than what's on this. Some with long, droney, jammy pieces. As far as this album goes, most of the songs are very straightforward, typically 3 to 4 minutes each, and just focused on that repetition and heavy rock sound. So as far as the songs on the album, I want to talk about a few of those. The very first song is a song called Regular John, and very good song. It was a staple of Queens of the Stone Age live sets for many, many years. The other thing about it is it also slyly references the 867-5309 Jenny song. There is a lot of repetition of phone numbers in the song lyrics, so you might catch that as you're listening to it. But very good, sets up the sound of, again, the repetition and the robot rock, as Josh Homme called the style of what he was going for with this album. So great song to kick off the album. The next song, Avon, another classic of this album for sure. One thing that I think is very unique about that song is there is a huge drum solo toward the end of it by Alfredo, which, again, compared to the albums in 1998, find me something else that had a drum solo that was produced in a pop context like this. It was very, very different than what was coming out at that time. The third song, If Only, was also on the Gamma Ray EP that I talked about earlier. It's slightly re-recorded for this version. It was originally known as If Only Everything, but I would say of anything, that was probably the song on this album that standed the best chance of being a hit. But it really didn't catch on. I wouldn't say it was played on the radio much, if at all. And I'm not sure if it was officially released as a single, but it was definitely qualify for something that, would fit in radio stations maybe today more so than back then. A couple of the other songs here, we have Walking on the Sidewalks, probably not the best song of the album. The next one I think is worth talking about too. It's called You Would Know, and it stretches the repetition to the absolute limit. There will come a point where that guitar riff just becomes annoying. It's so repetitious, but the song has a great payoff at the end. The coda of the song just completely changes, and it pulls out this fantastic pop hook out of nowhere and makes you kind of think, okay, well, it was kind of worth it all along. Like, that song really makes sense. So highly recommend that song. The next song, The Bronze, on this was not part of the original track listing. That's one of the ones that has now been added, but it's a good song. A couple of the other songs on here that not necessarily really well known outside of the Queens of the Stone Age fan base, but are somewhat played live, are the next two songs, which are How to Handle a Rope and Mexicola. Both of those are just excellent. And I also like that side C on the record starts with Mexicola because it almost feels like a first track again. It's just a very, very good song. Next couple songs, not necessarily the best. Hispanic Impressions, I believe, is an instrumental. Then we get into You Can't Quit Me, Baby. The other thing I want to mention is some of the song titles on this I think are kind of funny. The next one is one that was added to the reissue, which is These Aren't the Droids We're Looking For. Then we have Give the Mule What He Wants. We have Spiders in Vinegar Rooms, which is another one added to the reissue. And then we have the original song that was the last song of the original track listing, which was I Was a Teenage Hand Model. So that song is probably the most experimental of anything on the album. It's just kind of the wild closing track for it. The thing that's also kind of funny on that one is if you turn your volume way up, you can pick up a recorded phone message from Nick Oliveri about, I don't know, some kind of band matter, I guess, at the time. It got included as kind of a little Easter egg in there. So as far as the reissue goes, I definitely recommend it. Sound quality is great. The reissue was put out on essentially Josh Homme's private label that he has now, which is Records. And it was also a partnership with Ipecac Recordings, which I believe is Mike Patton of Faith No More and several other bands. That's his record label. So basically, I think that covers the general history of this album. If you like heavy rock that, again, sounds out of time, if you're into early 70s heavy rock, and maybe you've checked out some other so-called stoner rock bands, you might actually really like this album. And again, if you've kind of picked up with some of the other Queens of the Stone Age albums, maybe you didn't like them so much, they were kind of a mixed bag, I think this is probably their most consistent album. If you like the sound of one of the songs on this album, you'll probably like the whole thing. It's very consistent throughout. So just wanted to take a moment and talk about this great album. Hopefully you guys will check this one out if you haven't already. Hopefully I'll make some more of the random record reviews in the future if this video is well received. So please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.